Oh, Peter Jackson.
Ah,
And
well.
he would go on to create what he created. All right, Dan, let's take you back to the early 1900s. 1917 to be exact. But don't worry, you don't have to travel too far away from the area you're in now. We're going to stay right there in Ireland for now.
What did the English do this time?
Oh, you're very astute. You're a man by the name of Austin Stack, and you've been a political activist since about 1908 and joined the IRB, the Irish Republican Brotherhood, which would later change its name to the Irish Republican Army, or the IRA. You will be arrested in 1916 for your involvement in the Easter Rising. Now, Dan, do you know anything about the Easter Rising? Or is that just kind of some of that history that is brushed over?
It's far from brushed over now. It's kind of the start of the beginning of the end of British rule for us. It kind of what led to the War of Independence and stuff like that. It's extremely important part of our
Right.
history. So
So, pretty much it's an attack by the IRB along with Irish volunteers, the Irish Citizen Army, among others, on the British in Dublin with hopes of establishing an independent Ireland. Obviously, I'm making it very simplistic, but you know, it's a whole big story, but I'm just kind of chopping it down to the bare bones. It didn't work. The British brought in thousands of reinforcements to squash the uprising. About 485 people, mostly civilians, died. Um, Eventually, you get there, but it takes a
another
while.
5 years.
Yeah, it takes a little
Yeah.
while. So you, Dan, or Austin, you were a part of it. So you go to jail. And you're actually sentenced to death, but it's commuted. While in prison, about May of 1917, you decide to go on a hunger strike, a very popular way of protesting the conditions of the prison at the time. You stay on this strike for a while until the prison staff decides that you've starved for too long. So, one Saturday evening, the staff bursts into your cell. They grab you, carry you off to an operation room. They throw you in an examination chair and strap down your legs, arms, chest, and neck, and then they cram a metal device into your mouth in order to hold it open. You look down to see what the doctors in the room are holding. It's a pint of milk with an egg mixed into it and a pump with tubing. The tube, a thick rubber tube, is then forced into your mouth and down your throat. You're blinded by the tears in your eyes as the tube wriggles its way down your esophagus until it hits your stomach, hopefully. Then they begin to pump the milk into your body. But because of the trauma, the speed at which the fluid enters your stomach, and the body's natural rejection of a foreign object, you almost immediately begin to vomit, covering your clothes and the chair. And you don't just vomit during the process, you continue to regurgitate the contents of your stomach well after the procedure is through. And the next day, they grab you for a repeat of the torment. Except you have a different doctor this time. Before it was a Dr. Cook. This time it's a Dr. Dowdle, a doctor that is famous for this type of medical procedure. Now, he has quite the hard time getting the tube down your throat, so your body keeps rejecting it. You cough it out, or you throw it up, or instead of it going into your stomach, it goes into your lungs and has to be pulled back out. This treatment will continue until you are eventually released a month later. This is the horror of forced feeding. That Dr. Dowdle there's actually a book about this with the suffragettes and the Irish rebels and the conscientious objectors, covering all of it all the way up to like the late 1970s. that I got most of this from. And Dr. Dowdle is actually a pretty big character because he was kind of the guy for forced feeding. I'm not going to cover him really, but he did a lot of it.
The number one guy they call.
Yeah, something like that. I got in trouble a lot for people under him not doing the things that they were supposed to be doing. And he got in trouble a lot because he wasn't near as good at it as he liked to think he was. He was really rough, and sometimes tubes didn't go the places they were supposed to go. But
Nice.
Yeah. This is really the era of forced feeding's heyday, 1909 to the late 19 teens, specifically during the suffragette hunger strikes. British women protesting to get the right to vote would be arrested, then wanted to be seen as, there you go.
Fina, fina, fo. Fuck yourself to British.
They'd be arrested, then wanting to be seen as political prisoners versus criminal prisoners would go on hunger strike. But the government didn't want these women to die in prison. If they die, they'll be seen as martyrs for the cause, and the government will be seen as indifferent to the lives of their prisoners, which honestly they were, but they couldn't be seen that way.
Of course not. They already had enough bad publicity at that stage,
Yeah, you wouldn't want to be the PR guy for Great Britain at the time.
Just imagine the door. Pile of paperwork in that guy's desk.
We need you to fix something. What'd you do now? I don't know, something about a genocide. I don't know. It's a little thing. Now, for a while, the prisons would just let the prisoners go. Like Marion Wallace Dunlap, artist, illustrator, and active member of the WSPU, or the Women's Social and Political Union. She was regularly arrested for her offenses, including obstruction and leading groups of women on protest marches. July of 1909, Marion stenciled a passage from the Bill of Rights on a wall of the House of Commons, which read, "It is the right of the subject to petition the king, and all commitments and persecutions for such petitioning are illegal." Now, police once again arrested her. Upon entering Holloway Prison, the prison authorities rejected Marion's application to be placed in the First Division, which would have acknowledged her offense as political. Entirely on her own initiative, Marion decided that she would refuse to eat until her demands were met. She found herself released from Holloway after just 4 days, because prison staff feared that she might otherwise starve. 4 days.
Yeah. That can hardly go a couple of hours.
The fact that you think somebody's going to starve to death after 4 days.
Yeah, I don't know how long it takes. It's just massive difference between no water and no food. You can survive with no food for longer than you can survive with no water.
But well, if you go back to our starvation episode, we had people who survived, a few months without food. They just whittled away to nothing. So,
a nice segue. If you're only joining us now, if you're new listeners, please go listen to our past episodes, including starvation and abassination, not just a metal band.
And all the others, and bacon.
Yeah.
Now, what seems at the time to be an inconspicuous episode in the ongoing campaign for female suffrage escalated into years of controversy over the management of hunger strikes. The WSPU quickly realized the strength of hunger striking. The tactic fit well with the burgeoning spirit of self-sacrifice attached to the militant campaign. Hunger striking was underscored by an explicit threat of martyrdom. So from 1909 other imprisoned suffragettes imitated Marion. In turn, hunger striking evolved into the standard political protest. These protests immersed prison authorities and the Home Office, a ministerial department of the British government responsible for immigration, security, and law and order, in a highly problematic predicament. Two options left to them: allow rebellious, politicized prisoners to slowly commit suicide, or release them before the completion of their sentence. Both could have proven publicly distasteful. Initially, the Home Office chose the latter option, but criticism mounted during the summer of 1909. The simple act of refusing to eat was undermining the workings of the prison and the judicial system, raising concerns that all manners of prisoners, even murderers and sex offenders, might go on hunger strikes to get released.
Let the sexual offenders go on hunger strike all they want. Like, fuck them.
Well, but it's going to be the policy that if you go on a hunger strike, we're going to release you. I mean, you have to have very strict rules about who that works for and who it doesn't work for. That's why a lot of these women, like, we want to be seen as political protesters, because you got better. I don't want to say you got treated better, but things were a little bit better for you as a political prisoner versus a criminal prisoner.
Yeah.
And they wanted to be seen as a political plus it goes in your record of why you were in prison. And if you're in prison for criminal acts or political acts, those kind of determine what you would, how long you would stay in prison for.
So it's like trying to decide between whether or not you release good old Paul Bernardo because he decides to starve himself versus somebody on a picket line.
Yeah.
Who's, somebody from fucking what's that free oil crowd or whatever those assholes are after they get arrested for blocking an electric car event. That was funny. Yeah. Idiots.
Well, if Paul Bernardo wants to go on a hunger strike, he can go right ahead. That's fine. Just
let him eat my fist first, and then he can go on hunger strike all he wants.
You didn't make it long before you brought up Paul Bernardo. I was hoping to be done with him. You made it all of a quarter of an episode.
It's just when you said sexual offenders is the first person I thought of. So
Dan's white whale.
That, and I have I have myself fixing for a good old Big Mac carbonara. Oh yeah.
Fuck.